Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network, folks. We got a lot of great conversations for you on this Friday. Let's share with you what we're going to be talking about. The first conversation is the latest coming out of Uvalde, Texas. There are a couple of big discussions. One is, should we get into the habit of showing photos of the dead? This is a big moral and ethical discussion that's being had right now in light of the tragedy that happened in Uvalde at Robb Elementary School. Also, we're going to include in that the conversation about police response to the shooting of that active shooter, that 18-year-old. Why the police waited so long to enter the building before something was done to stop the shooting. We'll have that conversation. Also, Marilyn Mosby has dropped, Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby has dropped a list of officers with integrity issues. The list includes over 300 officers. And what does that mean for cases that have been prosecuted by those officers? Later on, we'll talk about President Biden forgiving $10,000 of student loan debt for per borrower. What impact will that make, and why some people are saying, Mr. President, it's not enough. And then Will Smith comes out on an exclusive interview that he had with David Letterman to talk about a vision where he said he lost it all before the Oscar slap. We'll have that conversation, all of that and a whole lot more, so stay with us. That's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, there have been, welcome to the show. There have been a number of conversations happening as we are still trying to process all that happened in Uvalde, Texas, where a gunman, 18-year-old gunman, went into the elementary school, shot and killed 21 people, 19 students, and 2 adults while there. Now, the big question is, why didn't the police respond? And now that has now become the big attention grabber for this whole situation, where it has been said that according to the Texas Public Safety Officer and Department, they've said that, yes, they made the wrong decision to not enter the building early. So we'll have a little bit of that conversation. Plus, just wanted to ask about this part of the discussion. In light of all that we've seen with this situation in Texas, and we can also include what we've seen in Buffalo, should we show pictures of the dead? I'm going to share with you what one writer's view is, and you, of course, we would love to hear what your take is on this moral, ethical issue. I want to bring in our culture crew member, Bakari Jones, who is a strategist, activist, working within various spaces of the LGBTQIA community. And she is joining us, as she has been doing on Fridays, to give us her insight and take on some of these big discussions. Bakari, good to have you, sis. How are you today?
Peace, Farajii. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is I've been saying it all week, Bakari. This has been a very, very hard week, to say the least, kind of looking at this situation. And as things continue to unfold, I'm looking at this situation in Uvalde from a couple of different angles. One is the killer's motivation to take it out, his bullying situation out on some children that had nothing to do with that, right? Not to say that he should have gone into a high school either.
Of course.
But this was totally uncalled for. And then now we're talking about this police situation, about the response. It was just released today, and I'm sure you probably seen this, and I just wanted to kind of get your take on it. It was just released today by the Texas Public Service Department, where they talked about, the Department of Public Safety Director, Stephen McCraw. He came out to acknowledge that they had made a wrong decision in not handling this situation, not as they handled the situation as a hostage situation versus an active shooter situation,
Mm.
which resulted them from getting on the scene and basically being just surrounding the building for an hour before entering the building to rectify the situation. And of course, we know that the 18-year-old gunman Salvador Ramos, he fired more than 100 rounds starting at 11:33 a.m. and within minutes, Bakari had killed 21 people. Now, an hour later at 12:36, there were a number of calls. One child called at 911 and was told to stay quiet. And at 12:47, she asked the dispatcher to please to send the police, not knowing that the police were actually standing right outside the building. Not knowing that. They did not breach the room with the Border Patrol tactical team until after that, according to the officials there. They waited a long time. They waited a very long time. And I know you're not a law enforcement, expert,
Clearly not.
but just looking at this situation, there were a number of 911 calls that came in where parents, community members screaming for the police to take charge, and they did not respond. What do we make of this? What do you make of this?
Man, Farajii, this is it's tragic, man. These are babies whose lives were stolen in such a tragic and violent way. It's like there's no, we talk about death. We've talked about so many murders and killings, unfortunately, in the United States in the last few months on the show. And one of the things that keeps coming up is that there's no, how do you right the wrong? How do you, there's nothing that can be repaired. There's no way to replace these people, but the lives of these humans that have been taken from us. And for me, it's difficult to want to start the conversation around the police because I feel like we're going in the I'm not gonna say the wrong direction, but I can't help but want to shift the conversation to talk about so many things that happen before we even get to the police making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
Which is how these assault rifles keep getting into the hands of people who are able to commit such heinous crimes. So I do understand your question. I hear your question. And, to me, I don't know if that comes down to training. It's an interesting theme that we keep finding, right? When we talk about guns, we talk about gun control, we talk about training. And I forget the name of the officer who killed the brother who we talked about some weeks back. But, in so many instances, it's been, you were fully trained, you were a trainer in this space. And when the rubber met the road, you made the wrong decision. So It's unfortunate, it's disheartening. In another instance like this, we see it's like, well, you were trained for this type of situation and missed the mark in terms of how to respond. So it's unfortunate. And it's odd, right? These are the folks that have access to powerful weapons as well to be able to take down and or disarm perpetrators in this instance. And then again, like I said before, reframing the entire conversation around how we are able to access guns and how we are able to access such powerful weapons.
And the crazy thing, Bakari, is that Salvador was able to get those weapons when he turned 18 years old. He went to the gun shop, and he was able to get these high-powered rifles. Right, so there's that problem. Then you do, like, to your point, you got all of these other things that have led up to this situation. We can certainly talk about bullying, that problem that continues to exist. And then we could certainly talk about mental health.
And the
know what I'm saying? Because Salvador he attempted to kill his grandmother. You know what I'm saying? That problem.
We talked about before, mental health, especially with masculine folks not being able to process, right? Because bullying is not anything new, right? Bullying is something that has existed for years and years and years, right? Bullying being the butt of the joke, the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, right? We know that bullying itself is not new. We talk about bullying coupled with the powerful impacts of social media, coupled with or then layered sort of with the lack of opportunity for masculine folks oftentimes to be able to not only express emotions. Before you can even express the emotion, you have to be able to process it. When we don't process the emotion, oftentimes what comes out is just anger and rage. And anyone that's in the psychological field or space will tell you what we see on the surface is just that. It's the tip of the iceberg. There's usually so much more that's beneath those layers, right? So it came out as explosive, deadly rage. But what was he going through before he got to that point, right? There's so many other things. And then Farajii, I can't not share this, man, but we had talking about Uvalde AR-15, Buffalo AR-15, Boulder AR-15, Orlando AR-15, Parkland AR-15, Las Vegas, Aurora, Sandy Hook, Waffle House, San Bernardino, Midland, Poway Synagogue, Sutherland Springs, Tree of Life Synagogue, all AR-15s. So even if we, I know there's so many people that don't want to have difficult conversations about gun control because of the Second Amendment. Okay, we got to allow you to have that perspective. However, can we have a real conversation about what it means to be able to access, again, maybe you can access a gun, but do you need an AR-15? Like, do you really need an AR-15?
That's the big question.
I'm not sold on anybody. I'm not sold on anybody needing the AR-15. I'm not. At this point, no. You cannot going to be able to convince me that that's what's necessary to move anywhere in the United States with that type of weaponry. Whether I don't care if you're hunting, I don't care what type of sport. No.
I get it.
Not necessary.
But Kari, I'm right there with you, and I think that's one of the big concerns. Now, as we talk about the police response, because I know folks are saying, well, the police should have did this, police should have did that, and again, this is like Monday morning quarterback. You looking back at a situation that turned out tragic, right? So as much, the very hard pill for us to swallow is that, the police probably could have did a lot of things better.
Could have, yeah.
But it doesn't take away the fact of the reality of where we are in this particular moment is that 19 children lost their lives in a very, very violent, tragic way, right? It doesn't take away that fact. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't give no comfort to the families. No. It doesn't bring me, and I'm not even in Texas, and it doesn't bring me no peace of mind. It's just like, okay.
And again, right, when we talk about being proactive versus reactive,
right?
This is not the conversation that we want to have. We don't, I've seen so many different things in the last few days about arming teachers, arming the resource officers in the school. That's not the I'm going to speak for myself. That's not the direction I want to see us move in, right? It's like, I don't believe that the issue that we're solving is that the issue that we're tackling is going to be solved with more guns. I just don't believe that, and I think that, so many different perspectives that we could take on this issue, but I just don't believe that it's going to be solved with more weapons. And I think that it's going to really require us to have difficult conversations about what is at the root of a lot of these issues, which is, as a culture, Farajii, we are under-resourced when it comes to being able to process our emotions. We're repressed in a lot of ways, man. So, and all of us are dealing with layers and layers and layers of grief and trauma. So,
I agree. I agree.
It's just a lot.
So to add to that, it was put out there by a writer from the Griot, Torre, who is a well-known writer. He put it out there, and he put an opinion piece called "We Should Show Images of the Dead." I want to share with people just a little bit of what he said in this opinion piece. Keenan, if we could show this from Torre. He said, if we show people what bullet-ridden bodies look like, it would be harder for them to shrug and say, well, nothing can be done. It would be so painful that they would be forced to act. We should not be able to hear these stories and turn away. We should not be protected from the pain of seeing limbs separated and faces destroyed if we are making a choice to live with mass murders all the time. If we're going to be a society where mass murder is part of our world, we should have to see what that really looks like. I disagree.
Speak out, brother.
I disagree. And here's why. I think to Torre's point, I think he makes an excellent point in terms of it being used as a way to bring people to the reality. If we weren't already exposed to that type of carnage visualization, if we weren't already experiencing that, some of us may have experienced that, right? And have that, to your point, that level of grief and unresolved trauma, especially within our community. If you've seen Black people shot down in the streets in whatever respective city or state you live in, then I've seen two bodies personally. I don't need to see no more.
Yeah.
That's just for me.
I hear you.
You know what I mean? And I think that culturally and I hear what Torre's saying is that you got to get that shock factor. You got to bring people, but
it's like,
I don't think that that's necessary. If you are the type of person where you need to see it all the time, to see bodies, bullet written. I mean, this is not like, I have children, you have nieces and nephews. This is children.
Yeah, these are babies.
You know what I mean? These are babies. Yeah. I can't do it. I'm gonna be honest with you. It doesn't sit well on my spirit. It don't sit well in my psyche. Bakari, I can't do it.
I get it. I think
I can't do it not because I don't want to face the reality.
Right.
I can't do it because out of respect for the dead, as they say. You know what I'm saying? Respect for the dead for me is I don't want that to be the final. I don't want that to be the
final image,
the dominating image of your body. I would rather you to show me a child smiling and say, "Oh, this little boy unfortunately lost his life, but he's smiling." I don't want to see body parts of children. That's way too much for me. That's way too much. What about you?
I know there are a lot of folks in the comments, and I think even Torre has in his article mentioned or made the comparison to, Mother Mamie Till showing the photos of Emmett Till.
Right.
And I think that was something, right? Like when that happened, the ability to share those photos, when that happened, literally in terms of the history of our media and the history of mass media, right? To be able to take that photo, put it in a newspaper, disseminate it. I think that was powerful, right? When I think that to try to compare it now, I won't say it's necessarily apples and oranges, but I think we are inundated with so much violence. I think just about, I'm not a gamer, but I know that, there's so many games, and I know it's not all games, but I know there are young people that have access to so many games that include shooting and death. So I think to your, not necessarily even to your point, but I think ultimately to the point of not showing the images, I just don't know that it will really have an impact. I think we are already so desensitized, unfortunately, to violence on this scale that I don't really think that it would have the impact that he believes it will have. But what I will say is that I think that we're in an interesting space and time. There's a phenomenon called contagion that researchers have been studying for, I think, maybe 50 years or so, about just the contagiousness of behavior in our culture. And they've studied, this related to suicide, and seen, the more that suicide is sort of reported on and shared, especially amongst young men, the more prevalent it becomes. And there's research that's now showing that the more exposure that we have, and I believe that there's a correlation specifically, once again, unfortunately, with young men, that the more young men are exposed to these types of stories in the media, the more contagious becoming seeing themselves in the role of the shooter, the more contagious that becomes. So I think, Farajii, to your point, I'm with you in that. I don't necessarily believe that the photos will have any impact. That's why I would say I don't think that they should be shown.
I
But I
don't either.
also sort of feel like on the flip side, I don't know how we mute the sensationalizing of the shooter, because there is some type of sort of sick glorification, I think, that's happening for young men to continue to see themselves as someone that's able to step into that role and perform those same types of malicious acts. So either way, I'm on the same side as you in terms of not wanting to see. I don't believe that those photos are going to have the impact that, and I get what Torre is saying, right? I think he was saying we need to be able to face the consequences of our actions. But I just don't believe that it would have the type of effect that it needs to. Plus, I think that the last that I heard, there's overwhelming majority, I believe, is 90% of Americans are in support of gun control. So I don't believe that the overwhelming majority of us need to see those images.
No,
I just don't believe that.
No. I mean, look, let's keep it real, Bakari. Many of us complain about watching the daily news in our respective cities.
You already know how I feel about Farajii. You already know how I feel.
I mean, come on, let's keep it real.
It's
how many of y'all, and I'm saying to those watching, y'all watch the news? Do y'all really watch the news? Where they every 2 minutes, because the news move fast, so every minute and a half to 2 minutes, somebody shot here, some carnage there. And what many people, I've heard black folks say this, I can't watch the news no more.
Or I think about folks specifically folks in Baltimore that are, follow the Murder Inc. account that said, oh, I can't follow this. It's too much. It's just too much.
Murder Inc. in Baltimore. Yep. There has been I mean, there are all these different types of accounts that show you very, very graphic photos.
Exactly. And I just don't believe it's helpful.
There's no
what I will say though, Farajii, I gotta share this. There's Nev Shulman, who is the host of Catfish, posted, and this was like 6 years ago, and every time, unfortunately, there's a mass shooting, it sort of comes back up in social media. He said, how about we treat every young man who wants to buy a gun like every woman who wants to get an abortion? Mandatory 48-hour waiting period, parental permission, a note from his doctor proving he understands what he's about to do, a video he has to watch about the effects of gun violence, and an ultrasound wand up the bleep just because. Let's close down all but one gun shop in every state and make him travel hundreds of miles, take time off work, and stay overnight in a strange town to get a gun. Make him walk through a gauntlet of people holding photos of loved ones who were shot to death and people who call him a murderer and beg him not to buy a gun. So when I heard that comparison to abortion, which I know we've talked about on the show as well, that to me is where I feel like we have to start redirecting our energy. If Americans in general are, on the strength of the Second Amendment, are not willing to give up access to guns, then I think we have to have some real serious conversations. There's no way that you're telling me somebody can't buy a bottle of Jack Daniels until they're 21, but they can access an AR-15 at 18. No.
Yeah.
And I feel like
pause.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. Look, I get it. We're going to continue the conversation. This is a hot one. But let me just say, folks, you don't have to believe. I personally, this is just me. This is me. But you don't have to see a dead body to know that death is imminent. You don't have to be like, oh, let me see how the person died. I mean, like ask yourself the question, like, why is that so important? How did they die? Let me see, because I need to know for sure that what you're saying is true. Have you ever, and I mean, before we take our break really quickly, and I know some of you have been in the military, some of you have had some serious experiences, but have you really ever seen a body that's been shot up with a high-powered rifle? It's torn apart. It's torn apart. And the thing that I think a lot of us, well, I'm not going to say a lot, I think that some people tend to forget is that unlike words, images stay on your mind. Yes, words you feel. No, that whole sticks and stone garbage is not real. Words hurt, trust and believe. But images stay with you. And I think we do ourselves a disservice when that's how we want to remember people, seeing them in their most, in their worst situation, like to see them in that place. That's just Farajii Muhammad speaking, but I'm saying, like, when you start to want to see dead children's bodies, I don't need to see that. I know that man killed those babies. So why do I want to play CSI and go up in the crime scene? Let me see the bodies.
Yeah, man.
I don't understand it. I don't understand it. All right, look, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's get some comments on this situation. Checking in with Culture Crew, Bakari Jones. Also, we're going to be joined by other Culture Crew members, Shaquaya McKenzie. And, of course, getting your thoughts as we're having the conversation. Should we show pictures of the dead, especially after a major tragedy like what we saw in Uvalde, Texas? We'll continue the conversation. Also, let's talk about Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby and how she has put a number of officers on her integrity issues list and how that will impact cases. So stay with us. A lot coming up in the second 30 of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Welcome you to the launch of the Mass Poor People's Low Wage Assembly and Moral March on Washington, D.C., June 18, 2022.
We are a new, unsettling force, and we are powerful. New, unsettling force, and we are here.
We're rising up to demonstrate the compelling power that we, poor and low-income people, have to reconstruct society from the bottom up.
And we need to do it with the loudest voices possible, the biggest actions possible.
Because we know that there is no scarcity in this land. The only scarcity is the moral will to do what's right.
Hold on, just a little while longer.
We are those with sub-minimum wage jobs who can't afford sky-high rent.
People with disabilities are the fastest growing minority group.
It's crazy to me that in 2021, it's still legal for workplaces to pay a sub-minimum wage to people with disabilities.
There are still so much trial and tribulations that we go through as Indigenous people. We can't get a decent wage to sustain ourselves, nor can we get adequate housing.
Veterans across this nation say enough is enough. We can't pat essential workers on the back on one day and then cut their health care the next day.
Health is a political choice.
What more do I need to do to prove that my voice is just as valuable as anyone else's?
There are still forces in denial that would try to slow walk our transition to a clean economy and a just future for us all.
We have an immoral system run by immoral people.
But together we walk and we fight.
It's time for a change. Reconstruyamos esta gran nación.
See, we are people of resilience as we fight these interlocking injustices together.
When we work together, mobilize together, and rise together, we become a voice for the voiceless, and we become an agent of change in a time where great change is needed.
We need the third reconstruction to ensure that deaf people, people with disabilities, and all people can have the right to live and to thrive.
We know what they are doing, but the question is, what are we going to do? Reconstruction begins when we change our mentality and say it's time for you to get your foot off of my neck.
Justice is coming soon.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back. We have been having a conversation, a couple of different things as new developments has been coming out around the killing in Texas. One big conversation has been the police response, how now it has been shared by the Texas Department of Public Safety that, yes, the police made the wrong decision in their handling of that active shooter situation when Salvador Ramos, the 18-year-old gunman, who walked into Robb Elementary and shot and killed 21 people. Outside of the doors, while this carnage was taking place, were a number of officers that represented various agencies, including the Border Patrol and the Texas State Police Department, that were a part of the tactical team to handle the situation. They did not make an entry into the building for at least an hour, while there were a number of calls made through 911 by parents and community folks who are asking for the police to intervene. Sad situation. Along with that discussion, folks, we've been also talking about this idea of showing images of the dead. We've been talking to Culture Crew member Bakari Jones to give us her thoughts around this situation. And her and I are both in agreement that it's not necessary for us to see the dead. That's our opinion, but we're going to hear from you in a moment. We're now going to be joined by, in a moment, I believe, Shaquaya McKenzie, another Culture Crew member, to share her thoughts as well. But let's talk a little. Let me get some comments here. I want to bring Bakari back into this situation. Let's get some comments from our watchers, because a number of people have been checking in. B Dizzle said, quote, and let's put these quotes up on here, and folks, keep your comments going as we rock and roll and through this discussion. B Dizzle said, I think a picture of one of those kids should be shown because we need to be shaken. That's what happened when Mamie Till showed her son's body publicly. A movement started. You can't unsee what you saw. And I get it. And I don't know. And again, I don't know, Bakari, and thank you, B Dizzle. We always appreciate you, bro. I don't know if, like, there have been so many mass shootings. Like, I'm trying to wrap my mind around this, Bakari. So bear with me. We just had Buffalo. In Buffalo, a lot of those victims were older. They were like, they were like in their 60s and 70s. And I think we had a couple of victims that were in their 80s. Now we're seeing a situation on the other end where they're children, where they're babies, right? If we were to show the images of Buffalo and then literally days later show the images of children.
Yeah.
Back to back. You see what I'm saying? You see the point I'm making? It's like it's too much.
Now, what I will say,
and
in terms of seeing the images,
I just want to throw this out there because I've seen some conversation on social media and stuff. People will say, well, Buffalo, we need to show the carnage that white people put upon black people. Read a history book, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, it ain't hard to see those images. I don't want to see somebody's grandmother on the floor in a shopping in the supermarket. Same thing. We're talking about the children. So it's like it's too. I think, when is there enough? When do we cross the line? When do you say I can't take this? Or when do we as people that are shaping the culture, when do we say this is not acceptable? When I remember when 9/11 happened, They have this. I watched this Netflix documentary about 9/11 a few weeks ago, and they showed footage of people jumping out of the building during 9/11. The crazy part was not them just jumping out the building. They also showed footage of you hearing the people bodies slamming against the ceiling of the other buildings next door where the firemen were. And while they were filming the documentary, you just heard thumps, boom, another body, boom. I mean, literally. And I'm thinking to myself, this is somebody's dad or mom or somebody's auntie or uncle.
Yeah.
Like, this is somebody, this used to be somebody's loved one.
Yeah.
Slamming against a ceiling of a building because they were in fear of their life. Like, when is enough enough?
I don't know when we draw the line, but you know, again, back to Torre's point, I still don't know that I want to see these dead bodies, but I do, especially now. I didn't realize that it was the same weapon that's been used in the overwhelming majority of these mass shootings. I think that if there was a way to illustrate the damage that can be done with the AR-15 in a matter, you know, if somebody was able to show this is what you could do with an AR-15 in 60 seconds, whether that was on the, you know, the body of a, I don't want the vegan folks to come at me, but if this is the body of a cow or this was a body of a, you know what I mean? Like this was some other, an object. I don't know what, you know, a man-made, let's say inanimate object that could be created that mimic the body to be able to show the damage that could be done with these weapons. I do think that that would help close the disconnect because I think that culturally we are numb to it. I think we're numb to it in a way. And I think that what people are getting at with showing the images of these dead bodies is ultimately wanting to shake people up. And we want to shake people up to what? To get them to take some form of action. That's ultimately what we're going for. So maybe it doesn't need to be the body of a child or an elder or anyone that's lost to, you know, this violent, these violent weapons, but something visual to be able to sort of bring us back into focus. This is what we're talking about. We're not talking about a water gun. We're not talking about a handgun. We're talking about an automatic weapon. I think it's something that could illustrate how much damage that can be done in such a short period of time. I think that if nothing else, I think that would cause us to, that would stir us to the point of wanting to take swift action.
Let's add to that. Let's post Karen M's Keenan her comment. Karen said something, and I'm seeing another number of people checking in with this rationale as well. Karen said, unfortunately, those in Congress refusing to pass legislation seem way too soul sick to be moved by the images. I'm gonna get to that point.
Yeah.
Sonia Jenkins checked in and said, Farajii, I say the images of those sweet angels who died should be shown to those in Congress who won't pass the bill. Maybe if they see those images, it might make them move to pass it.
Man.
It might, Sonia, to your point and to Karen's point. Here's the problem. I don't give a flying about Mitch McConnell and all of those guys that don't understand the severity of the situation. You mean to tell me we trying to appeal to them? Or about the damages? Or about the consequences of gun control or the lack thereof? Like we need to try to encourage them to see when Bakari, you brought up the data. Majority of Americans say that we need gun control. Majority of Americans believe background checks are important. Majority of Americans say you shouldn't have high-powered rifles. You mean to tell me that's not enough?
Right.
That now we got to get to the point, we got to show dead babies to influence a public official who may not be moved.
They may or may not. We don't know. Could be.
Like
could
these
be
are the same public officials who saw what happened on January the 6th, literally running for their lives, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th of January, decided nothing happened on January 6th. These are, I mean, literally saying, what are y'all talking about? That was not an insurrection. Nobody was climbing the walls of the Capitol. You mean the people who were outwardly lied to us in our face when that based upon an alternate reality, we should try to appeal to them? Shit. Why don't we just vote them out? Why do we got to appeal to somebody's sick soul or their view of morality? Why don't you just vote? Why don't we vote them out? I'm not appealing to a joker to say, hey, man, you really need to fix this because the babies are dying. If you don't get it, you don't get it. It's just that simple. Period. I'm not here to appeal to no senator because they want to play partisan politics. They want to try to keep their, babies. Look, let me tell you something. Let me tell y'all something. Y'all getting me. I'm getting too wrapped up here, Bakari. Let me tell y'all something. Look, man, we can play games all we want to, but you can't play with justice. You can't play with justice. You see what I'm saying? America is in the condition that she's in because you are in denial about the truth. And guess what? Justice is coming.
Reckoning is coming, right?
Reckoning is coming. Yeah. The American people.
It's with all things.
Come on, man. Come on. Because you and I, we study history. We understand the dynamics of how power is in this country. Justice is coming. There is going to be a reckoning. If you don't get it in 2022, if you gotta be to the place where you gotta show dead babies, you gotta get to a place where you gotta see the very extreme parts of life. Nah, dog.
You're already too far gone, in my opinion.
You already gone. That's my point. You already gone. I'm not trying to appeal to you. It's us. I'm not trying to appeal to that. And that's a minority, folks. Let's keep this very, very clear. That's a minority. That's a small part. Yes, they are in powerful positions, but if we understood how much power we have, we could change that reality. But I'm not trying to appeal to no jokers. I'm not trying to appeal to Ted Cruz. Come on, Ted. Look at these babies.
Man.
And what are you gonna say? Yeah, I'm so sorry. He gonna lie right in your face and and feed you the same bullshit. No.
What other pieces? Unfortunately, we know a lot of our politicians are looking at incentives outside of, there's so many other things to look at. So they could look at the images of these children whose lives were taken, and then
let's throw this in real quick, Bakari.
Yeah,
they're senators. They have access to those images.
Yeah.
Ted Cruz, he's from Texas. He can call down there, talk to Mr. McCraw, and get images if he wanted to. It don't make a difference. They're gone. They're not even operating in the same space and time as we are. They're gone. That's all I wanted to say. That's all I wanted to say. We got to stop this, folks. This is the terrible part of the culture. We got to stop trying to appeal to somebody that has shown us over and over and over again they don't give a damn. So why do we keep trying to, come on, give a damn. Come on, give a damn. Come on, care about me. Why? Please. And the crazy part is, any other tragedy in American history, Bakari, think about it. When the Jews teach their babies about the Holocaust, do you think those Jewish peoples, they show their children, and those images are emblazed in a Jewish child's mind, right? And they never forget. That's what they say, right? We never forget. Same way it's got to be for us as Black people. But guess what? guess what, man? You only got to show them once.
Yeah.
And if you try to bring up images of that tragedy of the Holocaust, they will fight you tooth and nail.
To respect and honor their, the legacies of their loved ones. Yeah, I'm with you.
You see what I'm saying?
I do.
We should be the same way about our experience in the transatlantic slave trade. You don't bring up, because that's our ancestors. You don't bring up images when we slaughtered. You don't bring up images when we lynched.
But see, Farajii, this is part of the challenge again in terms of ensuring the length and the, not just the length, but the I can't think of the other word I want to use, but the length at the very least of our cultural memory. I do think that those images are necessary to be shown, to really understand the carnage that our folks survived, right? Like, I do think that there's a place and space for that when we talk about historical memory, right? Because without it, it's, it wasn't that bad. And we see that happening now with revisionist history. So there is a place for us to be able to share those images and to lift up our ancestors in a way that helps us understand the role and that they played, the sacrifice that they did not willingly choose to make, but the sacrifice that their lives represent in the, you know what I mean, in the trajectory of our history and culture in the United States. But I think when we compare it to what Teray was getting at with this, it's almost like, well, let's throw it at the wall and see if this helps, right? That's kind of what my ultimate takeaway was, because I just don't think that there's necessarily going to be a way for us to say like, oh, it's not going to guarantee anything. So
right.
I think we still land at the same place. But I just wanted to say that because I do think that there's a place for that within our historical memory to make sure that we understand just how dark those times were, so that we understand like the light, although it's dim, it's shady right now. We got to say that. But to understand the darkness that we have still in a lot of ways emerged from as we, continue forward. So, man.
Let me bring Shaquaya. Shaquaya, you got a few minutes, and I know you've been trying to get in to this conversation. Shaquaya McKenzie, educator, activist. Go ahead, Shaquaya. I don't even want to interrupt you. Go ahead, sis.
No, it's what's funny is that I came in the comments like, tag me in, because the God honest truth is that it's a method of psychological warfare to desensitize individuals to acts of violence and carnage. It's not, it was a tactic used throughout any barbaric period in history where there was mass genocide and mass torture. Using the example of the transatlantic slave trade or slavery in the United States, the example of violence was used to keep slaves conditioned in their place, if you will, so as to evoke fear and to avoid resistance. I think the irony of this conversation is that we would think that by using what in a human, like, you have to be a good human to understand the weight of pain associated with images of violence. But that is not who we're dealing with or regarding to when we're talking about people we're trying to appeal to or would try to appeal to with these images, right? As you've already explained, Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz, it's not restricting it to them, but there are just certain souls set up on this earth that care not about evil, how it stings. They're numb to it. And the irony is that we do have and are desensitized as a result of the overuse of images of violence in the media. We didn't have to watch George Floyd die for 9 minutes in order for us to understand how wrong it was, but we did.
Facts.
We didn't have to see videos of Laquan Mitchell. We didn't have to see videos of Tamir Rice. We see these things on a daily basis, though.
Yep.
So it's not like this is not happening. Showing images of a body. We just saw, unfortunately, I literally am still traumatized and I'm holding my cousin accountable. I had a cousin from Jamaica send me a video on WhatsApp last weekend, and I didn't know what it was, so I just opened it, and it was the streaming of the Buffalo shooting from the
right.
kids.
He didn't give you, your cousin didn't even give you a heads up.
I don't know what he was thinking, and I love him. I know it wasn't intentional, but for me to open up the video and I'm like watching this guy driving, I'm like, what's about to happen? I wasn't even like the context of what had happened clearly was in my mind in terms of the event, but I had no idea. And I saw him mow down. Of course, I shut it off immediately, but we see these things.
It's true.
Right.
So it's not as if parading the bodies, especially of children riddled by bullets, is going to make a difference in what has been happening. We see the violence. We see dead bodies all the time. We see dead bodies on Instagram, and all it is a click to say, usually they put up a disclaimer, violent content. It's there's a preview if you don't want to watch it, right? But it's there all the time. So,
hey, Shaquille, let me ask you this very quickly, and I know you got to jump off, but I want to get your take on this as a parent, right? We're both parents, you and I. But many people are saying, Janelle checked in on, Janelle Phil said, but if the parents present the images, it may have more weight. There's no vote in the face of the parents with images of the babies, along with the history of their past, no vote. Do you believe that may be the case, that if the parents give consent, many people say, oh, well, like Mamie Till, maybe they need to, the parents, if the parents show the babies, that it will change things. Do you agree with that?
No question, but there was also a reason they didn't do that with Sandy Hook. Parents want the same regard and respect that you acknowledge. I'm not going to say, yes, if parents individually want to offer up evidence from the crime scene that they have received personally and use that as a form of political persuasion, they absolutely have that right as a parent, right? I would not personally do that. Because it's, again, to me, more pain for me to offer that up and be disregarded, which is the foreseen outcome, right?
Yep.
You may have change, but I think what Bakari brought up is more of a, demonstrative purposes. When people demonstrate things in trials, for example, the case of the likelihood of the case swinging in the direction of the prosecutor that shows an example, a demonstration, not the physical evidence of a killing, but for your example, using a gun to show shooting an inanimate object at a high rate speed and showing that destruction, it pierces the conscience differently because people are really thinking about themselves when they look at it. They evoke this idea of thinking about themselves, but when they see other people, the subjectiveness of bias, hatred, racism, whatever the case may be. If I'm a white person, I don't care about black people, and I see black people being held, okay, right? It doesn't matter. But I think every parent, every victim has a right to advocate for change on the behalf, on the way they want to do it, the way they think is going to be most useful and helpful to avoid pain and tragedy for anybody else. But I just don't think it should be an expectation. I don't think it should be a rally cry for it to be done.
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't make if it made a difference, the difference would be made.
I agree. Shaquille McKenzie, always good to hear from you. I know you spend a limited time with us today, sis, but we'll certainly bring you back on so you can get more of that airtime and we can hear more of your analysis and insight. Thank you, Shaquille.
Thank you for keeping us going. Farajii.
Folks, continue to post your comments and share your thoughts as we have this discussion. I mean, I'm and even with the parents thing, Bakari, just very quickly before we take our next pause, even with the parents thing, I don't know if I would even be comfortable with showing my children in that place as a parent, because what your intention may be in modern day 2022, you know how situation, you might be like screaming out for justice, screaming out for relief, but then it becomes politicized. It ends up in some joker's speech. You know what I'm saying? I talked to a parent today whose child was a part of this tragedy. And it's like, that's not the point. I don't want a shout out. You know what I'm saying? I don't want you to use the death of my child as some talking point.
Yep.
As some reference point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that's what Shaquille was getting at, is it would be so easy for it to be manipulated, you know?
Yeah.
And just used by someone else for that could, be for or against, I think, what will ultimately be gun control in some form or fashion. But once it's out there, it's easy for anybody else to put their spin on it, and then I think to have the idea of having those images manipulated by opposing perspectives is just, that to me, I think would just add an insult to an the type of injury that we keep saying no parent should have to endure, no family should have to endure, and yet here we are.
Yep. Forensic, very quickly before we take this break, I want to give forensic accountants a comment real quick, Keenan, where he talks about news footage and the embedding of journalists. Check this out, folks. He said news footage and the embedding of journalists in Vietnam, complete with the bloodied bodies of the wounded, turned many Americans against the war. The aftermath of the Tet Offensive and the aftermath of the Tet Offensive moved Cronkite. Yes, but we're in a different time. We're in a different culture. You know what I'm saying? Like children consume more violent images today than they have ever been in modern day America.
Yeah.
We are surrounded by violence, whether it's coming from the news, whether it's coming from quote unquote entertainment, right? Like violence is so ingrained in us that I don't know if we truly understand how desensitized we have become, or how much of a thirst we have for it, because of the fact that it's so much a part of our culture. And so, yes, it could move people. But check this out. Out of all the violence that we said, well, mass murder, showing these babies might move people. How come the gun violence hasn't moved people? Mm-hmm. I mean, seriously, people are still buying guns, even though there are a number of people that have been killed by guns.
That's the purpose, though, right? Because it's embedding fear. It's embedding fear. This is so interesting to me. Again, with Mamie Till, with Vietnam, I'm curious about what the 2022 equivalent of that would be, right? Because it's like it was shock value then, it was shock value in Vietnam. I don't know what we would produce, and I literally shudder to think about what that imagery would look like that would create that same level of shock value in 2022.
Absolutely. Look, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talking about some of the other stories that we have planned for you. I know this was such a big conversation for us. So, we just felt like we just had to spend a little bit more time on this. And the number of you are still talking about it in our Facebook and YouTube chats, and you can continue to talk about it. But I think we need to discuss it because it's such a big, not just a hot topic, but I mean, it's a cultural point that we are in this place right now that we love violence. We love violence. We love to see it. And I think my hope is that having this conversation will force us to ask and look within ourselves. Like, do we need this? Is this good for us? Like, ask those questions to yourself first, and then ask those questions is like, what are the implications of it? What's the impact of seeing these images, right? And then taking the conversation even further. Does the community gain from this? Does our country gain from this? I mean, we have to look at all elements on all sides of this discussion to really figure out what's the best way to handle it. Because one of the things I think we should not forget is that at the end of the day, these children were parts of families. These family members, these adults in Buffalo were a part of someone's family. And we do not want to in our pursuit to get people to see and get aware and to wake up that we force people to lose sight of the victim's humanity in the midst of all of this.
Yeah.
That's the concerning part for me. That each of these victims, whether you're talking about Buffalo, whether you're talking about Texas, these were individuals, these were people, and they need to be respected. Because why? They lived a life just like you and I. And at the end of the day, we will want our lives to be respected when our time comes. And their time came, and it came in a very tragic way So we should do all that we can to make sure that we respect them for who they are and the time they spent on this earth. That's all. That's all. All right, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, more conversation. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. All right, folks, in light of all that has been happening, there are some other big stories that we wanted to bring some attention to. One of the big stories is around student loan debt. And now, as you know, there have been a number of discussions and a number of efforts that are happening right now to convince President Biden and his administration that student loan debt forgiveness need to happen, especially in the amount of $50,000. Well, today it came out that President Biden is going to move to cancel $10,000 in student debt per borrower after months of internal deliberations over how to structure loan forgiveness for tens of millions of Americans, according to folks with knowledge of the situation. And take a look at that, folks. He's leaning towards $10,000 student loan for loan forgiveness. But people are still saying to the president, it's not enough. Now, there may be an official, there has been a delay on the official announcement of this just simply because of what has happened in Uvalde, Texas. And as a result of that, people are gearing up even more. People, advocates on the ground are pushing even harder, saying that the president needs to push that up to $40,000 more to make it to that place of $50,000. But $10,000 per student will be forgiven for students per borrower. I want to put out this to share with you what the official, what the reports are saying or how this will work out. Take a look at this, folks. This was reported by the Washington Post. So essentially, the White House latest plan is called for limiting debt forgiveness to Americans who earned less than $150,000 in the previous year, or less than $300,000 for married couples filing jointly. Two other folks said that are familiar with the situation. It was unclear whether the administration will simultaneously require interest and payments to resume at the end of August when the current pause is scheduled to lapse. I want to bring in Culture Crew member Bakari Jones back into the discussion to give us her insight about this. Bakari, you know, the president has been hinting, his administration has been hinting that something is coming down, right? Like, okay, we heard you loud and clear, $50,000. It may happen. But now that he's putting out, now that this is happening with $10,000, do you think now that the president is going to move forward on the 50, or you think that this is going to be it in terms of student loan forgiveness?
Man, I don't know. What I saw on CNN was that I think it was 54% of borrowers owe less than 20. So I think if more than half owe less than 20 and they can, that $10,000 would, obviously make if the max you owe was 20, 10K will be a significant dent in that. I think it'll be worth it and, worthwhile enough. And I think that may satisfy the demand of a large enough portion of those with student loan debt that I don't want to say get away with, but that may be enough of a majority for folks to sort of, say, okay, that's enough. We'll take it, that something will be better than nothing. But I'm not sure. I mean, I'm really curious. And, I've started reading and learning more about the impacts of that this forgiveness will have on inflation and spending, additionally. So I think there's so many other pieces that are tied to this particular issue. And I think if there are more negative consequences that are forecasted as a result of the cancellation, then I don't see the administration continuing to increase the amount.
Well, that's one of the big things then. I mean, when we talk about the situation right now, Bakari, where, and this is something I'm personally, just seeing, like Americans are really struggling right now, right? Like Americans are really struggling. People are trying to figure it out. Now, is that the case for all Americans? Certainly not. But I think you have a lot of people in a position where they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to, in the midst of, we're still dealing with this pandemic with, you got a lot of people are trying to figure out what they want to do with themselves, how they want to, live a different life than they did prior to the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we're getting mixed messages from the government and just in general that people are saying, oh, there's a new normal. Oh, there's changes on the horizon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like America is different. But then at the same time, when it comes to finances in this country, when it comes to the credit system in this country, people are penalized. You're penalized for working this type of job versus that type of job. You penalize, I mean, in so many different ways. And it's becoming to a point where you're like, you know what? I don't even care anymore. People, like, the purpose of college is to become educated so that way you can become a better person and then you can offer your skills and talents to make other people better, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the big purpose of college. And even that pursuit has become tainted. Even that pursuit has feel like it just left you wanting more because it's just like, go to college, get a job. Okay, fine. If I am going down that line, you can't even get a job.
Right.
You overqualified in some areas.
Not one that's going to allow you to pay.
Or if you get a job, you can't pay off the damn debt.
Flat out.
I'm trying to understand, Bakari. Like, are we selling people a pipe dream? Now, trust and believe. I'm a college graduate. I understand the value of education. That's different. I understand the value of education. But when you're talking about this idea that we want to continue to put out there, like this is America from 1950, go to college, and then when you come out, you automatically will be given a job. You automatically afforded these opportunities. None of that is happening. All of those things are decreasing, especially if you're a woman, if you're Black, if you are a part of marginalized communities. You're not going to be afforded those same opportunities to be able to sustain and support yourself or your family, and damn sure not going to be able to pay back all this debt. I remember I was reading a piece. What's the gentleman's name? I think it's Mark Cuban. He's the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
He said he was in full support of President. At first, he wasn't in support, but then he changed his mind and said, "Look, I am in support of President Biden, chipping away $10,000." He said, "But let's look at the other real problem. Why are schools charging so much for their education? Why is tuition so high?"
Right. In the first place.
I feel like there needs to be a I mean, at some point, Bakari, you understand systems, and we have had this conversation personally. The system that we're currently in is going to break.
It's incredibly flawed. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It just can't sustain. I think that, there's so many, when we talk about the like the .com bubble, right? We talk about the housing bubble. I think that the cost of higher education is in that same, it appears to be in that same space, right? That's my novice perspective. I think that it's in a lot of ways it's in that same space. And when it really boils down to valuing, if you again, Farajii, I also value education, then we have to ask the question, well, is this the best path to go forward if you value education? If you have some education, you understand enough education to understand supply and demand, inflation, then that would definitely discourage you from going to college in the first place, right? You would pull up to YouTube University with your Wi-Fi password and you get all the education you need, get an Audible account, your library card, and you'd be good to go, because it's not something that's sustainable. And I think that, we talk about education, whether or not the system can sustain itself, it becomes a critical part of that. And of that conversation. And in terms of where we're going, I just don't think that's possible. The other piece in the CNN article that I wrote was that the other 45%, so it's 54% had 20K or less. The other 45% of the debt was, 10% of borrowers owed 80K or more. So even if we just look at that 10% of folks, and I wonder what that range is. So 54 have 20K or less, 10% have 80K or more. Was that 65? So that gives about 35 in the middle. What is that 35%? What's there? That means that debt is somewhere between $20,000 and $80,000, right? And to that, $10,000 is a drop in the bucket. So if the path forward is not going to be student loan forgiveness, you go forward, you find a job that you're not going to be able to pay the loans back in a way that's comfortable, or in a way that provides the lifestyle that you and your family want or need. That I think culturally, that means that we as a culture don't value education. And that's, again, something that, the connection between all these issues, man, is astounding to just see. So,
yeah. I think that is absolutely true. I think that is absolutely true. Let me just share what folks are saying, and folks, keep your comments coming along. Dejima said, "Can the dead be asked why higher education is so high?" Let's ask Ronald Reagan. Right. Tiana checked in and said, "Tuition is high because of administration bloat."
Interesting.
Yeah,
term.
that's absolutely right. Like
administration bloat.
Huh?
Administration bloat. I have never heard that term before.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one either. But it's certainly true, because people's salaries are crazy when they go to college. Of course, professor. I'm not saying that teaching is one of those professions where you should be paid well, right? You shouldn't. I mean, that's
Agreed.
not. I'm not taking from that.
Agreed.
But I'm thinking, like, when we had a conversation about Harvard, when Harvard did this whole thing about admitting that they had contributed to the slave trade and all of that stuff, we had Dr. Carr on here. And folks, make sure y'all check out Dr. Carr's latest episode, The Black Table, today. It just dropped. But Dr. Carr said that Harvard had an endowment that was like $55 million or something crazy. So, and when you think about an endowment for a college, right? You're like, whereas, of course, HBCU struggling, trying to keep stuff together, trying to keep the buildings open, struggling, all that stuff. So when you think about it on those terms of like how much colleges, bring in, like some of these PWIs, they bring in so much money, and yet the students are left wanting. John Rush checked in. I love this comment. He said $10,000 is not enough, period. Need to change student loan debt reporting. To credit bureaus, student loans should not be calculated in DTI and should never use and should be never used when buying a home. John, you and me about to start a revolution. You, me, and Bakari, we're gonna start. John, we are about to start a revolution. I don't understand that. They and trust me, when you're going through houses, cars, student loans don't matter, but they take down your credit score. Now, you still might be in school. You might have just graduated from school, but you're going to feel the consequences of those debt. And look at that. I mean, just from a financial point of view, you tell people go to school,
right,
so they can do and better their lives, right? You tell people that. As a result of that, they acquire debt. You penalize them on their credit, but you want people to work their way out of a slavery debt situation, right? You want them so you can reward them with higher wages when they work or if they find a job in their field. I mean, it's the most ass backwards system. Like, why would you? So then all around it, Bakari, you tell graduates of colleges across this country, this is graduation season, right? So you say, to graduates, oh my gosh, you're doing such a great job. Great. But then you penalize them with debt. You put them in a hole with debt. Now they got to walk around burdened, stressing. They don't feel like they accomplished nothing. They feel like they went from the frying pan into the fire.
Right. Yeah.
And their first major reality check that they are, quote unquote, an adult is debt. Now they hustling and scrambling to get a job. And now their mind is not being as sharp as they could, because sometimes they may get a job in their field. Sometimes they may not.
Right.
But they are already burdened with trying to pay off debt. And they're not focused on trying to be the best whoever they studied they wanted to be in school. That's the problem. And to John's point, thank you. You're absolutely right. We penalize the future, then get mad because the future isn't performing as well as we want them to, in spite of the penalty. Absolutely backwards. Bakari, you can respond. You just shaking your head like
I'm like, because I just don't disagree, but I think the other piece of this is like, what is the conversation we're having, and then are we having the right conversation? Because if even if there was a 100K, we don't wipe out 100,000 up to $100,000 worth of student loan debt. How many times can we do that? And it goes back to what is sustainable and what's not. So even with, I can't wait to learn more about administrative bloat, but even with it, if, we resolve, a portion of student loan debt for some Americans, the problem comes right back with the next class of graduates, right? Because the cost is still high with administrative bloat, right? And factored in, it still is high. So it's a never-ending problem. So how do we resolve it? And if it's not, finding a way to make education worthwhile, I think there are enough people that also see the value, understand the value of education, but there has to be a way for us to be able to pay instructors and educators a wage that they are deserving of. And there also has to be a way to get students to matriculate through these institutions of higher learning into careers and fields where they're going to be able to make the money to then be able to, right, to contribute into that particular cycle. But as it stands now, I guess, my thought with the 10K, again, 10K or 100K, how are we not back in the same situation in a matter of years? And so I don't know what that means in terms of the overall cost of higher education in the first place. But at this rate, we're not going to be able to sustain it. And I think there are enough folks now that are seeing, if they don't go, or maybe you do decide to continue to go to college, but the decision that you make is maybe not related to what it is that you actually want to study, which you actually want to learn more about, which is a luxury. That's a privilege. But maybe it's more connected to who you're going to be able to network with and where you're going to be able to get a job.
Right.
Period.
Right. So. John also added that the what did he say? Let me make sure I see what John said. John said that tax credits should be used and tax rebates should be used to help to offset these student debts. That President Biden should look at that as an alternative. And I agree. Brother King Lee, John, thank you so much. Great comment. Brother King Lee, you brought up something. You said broke. Well, let me make sure. You said broke, busted, burdened, broke, and busted. That is not a good way to live. This is the future. This is how the quote unquote the future has to start their adult life. Burdened, broke, and busted. We had a conversation on the show here, Bakari, a couple of weeks ago, how a lot of college students believe that when they graduate, there are a great number of them who believe that they was going to earn six figures. And then once they got into the real world, realized that they weren't bringing in 100,000 or even 90,000 or 80,000. They bring it in 30 and 40,000. Burdened, broken, busted. And you wonder why the future looks bleak. You can't be like, oh, the future looks bright, but you burdening them. Mm-hmm. You leaving the next generation broke, and you leave their spirits busted, and you get mad at them for not being great. And the few of us that can get through, right? We like diamonds in the rough. You know what I mean? Like you actually doing something in your field. You know what I mean? Like when people ask me, like,
it's rare.
Like people ask me, like, what did you go to school for? I say communications, public relations. They like, you working in your field? Like, yeah, I've been working in my field for 20 years. They like, you still work in it? I'm like, yeah, I do it every day.
Yep.
They like, man, you become like this unicorn, you know?
And there's so many people.
Like this,
that's
like, whoa.
That's so many people.
I mean, that's how crazy it is. You go to school to be an artist. You end up working at retail. Yep. You go to school to be a chef, right? You selling cars. Nothing wrong with those jobs, but that's not the plan. And a lot of times we're forced to make decisions, especially life decisions, out of convenience, not because that was the path that we chose for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And when you choose a path for yourself, trust and believe. And I know folks y'all can check me on this. But when you choose a path for you that you want to take for to do something that you want to do, guess what? You're gonna have to make some sacrifices to get to that place. Bakari, I know you made some sacrifices. Bruh. You have to make you're gonna have to sacrifice just to achieve your dreams. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those sacrifices can be so serious and so severe. Your time, your time away from your family life, you lose friends along the way. You know what I'm saying? You got to give up other opportunities.
But accessing additional resources, accessing a better quality of life through being able to finance and borrow should not be one of the things that people have to sacrifice. That's really, I think that there's certain sacrifices, I agree with you, Farajii, that are par for the course when it comes to anything that you want to do that is related to elevating yourself, right? Study, discipline, sacrifice. I think those are all par for the course, but you shouldn't have to sacrifice future opportunities because of the debt that you are saddled with because you wanted a better opportunity. It's like this, so it's working against itself. It's working against itself.
Absolutely. Look like so yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We got to talk about what's going on with Will Smith. I thought this was an interesting story, so I wanted to bring it up to you folks. I'm not trying to rehash old things, but I thought it was interesting. And I was thinking maybe we can glean something from this conversation, from this story about Will Smith. And so I'm going to share with you the details of it when we get right back. So stay with us, The Culture, here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, we wanted to have a discussion I thought was very interesting about Will Smith. Now, since the Oscar slap, I think a lot of us have been asking the question about where's Will Smith? What is going on with him? Then the latest rumors, the latest conversation about Will Smith has been that he's going to get an official divorce from Jada Pinkett Smith. We don't know. I mean, I think there's been just some rumors about it. But here's a part of his life that I think is interesting. When he had a conversation with David Letterman on David Letterman's show, and my next guest will be, and he talked about an experience that he had. Check this out, folks. I can't make this up. He talked about an experience that he had where he had a vision of losing everything. Now, he had this vision-like experience, this vision before the Oscar slap. So let me just share with you what he said this vision was all about. Take a look. Check this out. Keenan, let's post this one. According to Inside, where he had this conversation, he was talking about an experience which he describes as being the individual most hellish psychological experience of his life, where he was forced to face his fear of losing his fortune, reputation, and success. And so he said in his vision, he said, I'm drinking, I'm sitting there, and then all of a sudden, it's like I start seeing all of my money flying away, and my house is flying away, and my career is flying away. This is what he told David Letterman. He said, I'm trying to grab for my money and my career. My whole life is getting destroyed. He said, I'm in there, and I'm wanting to vomit and all of that. He said, I hear a voice saying, this is what the fuck it is. This is what the fuck life is. And I'm going, oh, shit. He said he told David Letterman that the experience, while frightening, taught him a valuable lesson. He said, quote, anything that happens in my life, I can handle it. I can handle any person I lose. I can handle anything that goes wrong in my life. I can handle anything in my marriage. I can handle anything that this life has to offer me. Let's bring Bakari Jones back into this. Bakari.
Why are you bringing me into this, Farajii?
I got to bring you into this.
Man.
You're my culture crew member for the day. What are you talking about? But here's why I found this to be fascinating, and I really wanted to talk about it because I like to, you know, for me, I like to see myself as being one who is always striving to be in tune with himself, with the creator, with God, with the universe. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like to understand, because I truly believe that as human beings, we're not just physical beings, right? That there are deeply there are parts of us that are rooted in the intangible. There are parts of us that are attracted to the unseen, right? Mm-hmm. And those parts make up the nature in which we are created in. I'm trying not to go out in space with this, Bakari.
I'm with you.
So when I heard and read the story, I said to myself, this man was given, and this doesn't happen to everybody, but a man was given a glimpse of his future, right? And then when I read the story and then just kind of reflected on it, I said, damn, he was given a glimpse of his future, but why? So I think that there is something very powerful. I don't think Will Smith would share something that personal, that intimate, right? To say, oh, yes, God favors me, or, oh, yes, I'm so in tune with the universe. It's like when we hear artists talking about how, and I think, who was this? Sam Cooke, who talked about, kind of seeing himself, how he would transition from this life. We know artists like a Tupac, these individuals who had been given visions of how they would transition from this life.
Yeah.
So I do think it's possible that all of us, that any one of us can be given a vision of a future life. I believe in that. I believe that's possible. But I think it's so powerful that it does really happen. And I don't know, and I'm trying to process it myself, like how, Will said, I can handle anything that comes in my life. And I'm glad that he kind of gleaned that lesson from that experience. But it's really fascinating to me that he saw himself losing. It's so fascinating. What are your thoughts about that, Bakari? I'm itching to know.
Man, so I mean, I do think that there are folks that, well, one, let me go back to the beginning. I think that you're right. I think there's the tangible and the intangible, right? The seen and the unseen. That we're all experiencing, walking through in this life. I think they said he was on a psychedelic when he had this experience. We had this vision. I think it's interesting to see what Will Smith in this instance, what he perceives as losing what he perceives as everything, right? So in that story, he sort of is talking about how it's the money and it's the house and the career, and what he was able to hold on to was his family. So I think that, to me, I'm like, well, look, if he loses all of the tangible and he's able to hold on to the intangible, then, I think it's a beautiful thing. And it then makes me wonder, was that the slap, was that in favor of him? That really was him acting in favor of maintaining the intangible, right? Maintaining the relationship that he and his wife have. So I didn't even hear about the rumor of he and Jada Pinkett divorcing. I didn't hear about that yet. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think Will Smith has so much talent, and that, I hope that we are able to kind of move forward culturally, knowing that no one is their worst mistake. That we all have we should be able to move in a space where we can, kind of experience a level of reconciliation and redemption. So I'm hoping that this is, him seeing maybe not another life for himself, but I think that I feel like the way that I perceive Will Smith in the media is somebody who seems to care about the intangible pieces, right? That he has the money and the house and all of those things, but I just feel like Will Smith doesn't present as somebody who is overly concerned about those things. Like, yeah, he got them, but I feel like he presents as somebody who, the family man, like having his kids and his wife around seem really, really important and critical to him. So I think it's interesting to me that I'm like, was this really even a vision? Because it seems like that's already who he is. So I hope that, the brother is able to move forward. I do think that what's interesting to me is going to be what his net worth is moving forward after being not necessarily banned from the Oscars, because I don't know how much that would impact his net worth, but specifically resigning from the Academy of Motion Pictures, right? So I'm just curious about what that impact will have on his net worth and how much his financial future will be impacted by these decisions moving forward. And is that really him, quote unquote, losing it all and being able to maintain his family instead? So those are my thoughts about it, Farajii. It's an odd situation though. Oh, I can't hear you.
There we go. I was saying I love him, and I think you bringing up some great points. I think that it's going to be interesting to see what his net worth is going to be, right? Like after all of this. First and foremost, look, I'm a believer. I'm an optimist. I think he's going to bounce back, right?
Yeah.
Like he didn't do something so egregious that it wasn't like he murdered somebody, he violated children or something like, you know what I'm saying? It's not something so egregious. Yes, it was a stupid thing, but he's going to bounce back.
Right.
But I think that it's just that, like Will Smith, and I don't know, like there's more than meets the eye to Will Smith. That's obvious.
I'm with you there.
Yeah, like he's not just just an actor. You know what I mean? He's a person that has gone through some things, but then more importantly, I think he understands human beings. I think he understands a lot about life. And I think there's something that we can all kind of learn from him, right? And his journey. And, at the end of the day, he's a man, just like he's a regular human being.
Mm-hmm.
But to have this vision of him losing it before the Oscars, woo, that's like a timing thing for me. You know what I mean? It's like, and
I'm not willing to say that. It's like according to who, right? I hope that this is not. I hope he doesn't perceive himself as losing. I know that losing everything he worked so hard to build. I hope he doesn't perceive that incident as him. And I hope it. I hope financially. I hope in terms of the future of his career. I hope he's not forfeited everything with that. But I'm not. I don't know. We'll see. Like, what will be Will Smith's next role? Right? Have roles been taken away from him that we haven't heard about yet? Right? I don't know. But I'm hoping that this is that vision is not, in fact, coming to fruition for him.
Let me just share what some folks are saying about him. B Dizzle said, "I'm done talking about Will Smith. All I want is healing for him, Chris, and Jada. All this other stuff is just other stuff." I get it. I get it. I get it. B Dizzle, I get it. So pretty much B Dizzle has checked out on this conversation.
I'm with B Dizzle. I'm with B Dizzle.
Davey Floater said, Will's gonna be fine. Yep, he will be. Taylor said, he is very introspective, so I think this situation will work itself out. He cares. I agree. McCole said, Will Smith is not the first and will not be the last to slap someone for saying something they didn't like. Will Smith's money will be good. Yeah, I think his money is going to be good. But this is bigger than money because, 4 projects he lost or have been delayed, right? Like Bad Boys, a project about his book, Will, which is, I think is a great book. And 2 other projects have been kind of put on hold. So that is interesting. Karina said, look, it's hard to believe, and he should just keep quiet right now. I love Will Smith, but his behavior on the public stage was out of order. Handle that behind the screen. Right.
Yep.
Donita said he may just be in his emotions lost in different ways. Different when you make $40 million than when you make $40,000 than when you make millions. Folks that make millions jump out of windows.
Well,
facts. But see, Will is not that type of guy, though. He came from humble beginnings. I'm not gonna say he came from nothing. He came from a 2-parent household. He came from humble beginnings. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But my thinking is, this is not just about him. I think this can be applied to any of us in life, though, Bakari. I think that any one of us, can see. And here's my thing. This is the metaphysical Farajii Muhammad.
All right, let's go.
Y'all gotta bear with me. Because I read about this stuff. I find this stuff to be very fascinating. Like there are, and folks, y'all post your thoughts on this. Do you ever have signs of things to come that you may or may not have paid attention to?
Yep.
Have the Creator, has the universe ever shared with you, giving you some sort of premonition, some sort of vision, some sort of warning?
Yep.
Of something to come?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Have you ever had that experience? Like I've had those experiences. Have you ever walked up to somebody, for example? I know let's just take. I mean, it's Friday, so we can kind of go there, right?
Let's go.
It's Friday. Have you ever had an experience where you walked up to someone and you can kind of see the future of that relationship before you even said hello? Or is that just me? Because you had those experiences?
I've had the experience, and specifically I think many of us have had experienced it with health, to be honest. I think a lot of us get those little whispers where it's like you get a little inkling about something, whether it's something, right? Like it may not terribly upset you, but it's a little discomfort. You shake it off. You overlook it. Oh, no big deal. But we know, right? That's your body telling you, like, hey, you can't really maintain this. If you continue down this path, it's not going to end favorably for you. I think in that same instance, I think we get that sort of it's like the gut check, right? And our guts are right. It's the brain. It's another brain, and it's able to do a quick assessment, energy wise. Right, most of the information we are exchanging is nonverbal anyway. Right, the overwhelming majority. So you get that quick read, and because we're conditioned to be, I think, so linear in the West to disregard the things that are intangible, to disregard spirit in a lot of senses. We are looking for the sort of cold hard fact to go along with the thing instead of just listening to the gut check or the information that your body is telling you about something. Your body, your spirit is telling you about a situation. In that same instance where I think a lot, at least for me, I won't say, maybe not, it may not even be something negative. It just, we just call it a bad vibe, right? And I know I found myself in a position where I'll rationalize engaging with someone. I'm like, they haven't done anything. I'm reading, I'm assuming. You should make assumptions, but I know that gut check was like,
yep,
maybe not.
Yeah,
maybe not. And I always share with folks that one of my sisters shared with me. She said sometimes, look, maybe their great grandmother just didn't get along with your great grandmother, right? It's above you. Maybe it don't have anything to do with what we're dealing with right here, right now in 2022. But you got that gut check, you got that feeling, you got that sort of premonition. Just listen to it. But right, we're humans. We want to ignore it. We want to think we're reading too much into things. But I think we get those types of sort of whisperings. And I think they start off quiet. And I think the more we go on down those paths, especially when they're not for us, I think the louder and more catastrophic those signs and that wisdom, I think the louder it gets.
Yep. And a lot of times, Bakari, when you don't listen, and see, that's the thing. That's the thing, folks. That's the thing. Like, because we live in a culture where that appeals only to the physical senses, we have lost I think we have lost this belief or this trust in the things that you can't see, in the unseen, and the intangible. So many of us, we've been kind of like conditioned to just except the things we can see. Oh, I can see this. I can see that. I can taste this. I can hear that, right? But when you get some level of communication, let's call that, when you get certain types of communication from unseen sources, intangible sources.
There you go.
You know, we can't just blow that off and say, oh man, that was just, I don't know. Because that's the stuff that, one, could either save your life, save you some grief, save you some time. Right. You know what I'm saying? Or it will, not in a negative sense, but it will enhance your life. It can make your life more fulfilling. And that's all I'm saying, that many of us, when we're in the rat race and we don't stop to reflect, we don't stop to think or to meditate or to listen, then something is lost in that process. Let me just share with you what people are saying. Brother King Lee said, yes, I've had that experience. My last romantic relationship involved me not, oh, I'm sorry, let's put this on the screen, Keenan. He said, my last romantic relationship involved me not getting my ish together with the sister/queen, and I didn't listen to my intuition to get my ish together. Sounds like he lost out. Sounds like he just lost one. Sorry, Brother King Lee, my man. I'm so sorry to hear that, brother. Let's go with Damon Blissett. Damon checked in and said, my man Damon said, look, I saw that I was going to lose my job a year before I did in 2013.
Wow.
That's how I ended up moving to Kansas City. And the question was, Damon, did you prepare? Did you listen? When you saw you lost your job a year before, did you say, all right, let me get my stuff together. Let me see what other opportunities are out there. Did you prepare for that? I'm wondering. So let me know if that is the case, Damon. Let me know if you prepared for that. How did you handle that? That's a great point. Janae checked in and said, I agree that certain premonitions prompt us, alert us of something off, unusual is on the horizon. Hence, 2020 is hindsight. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. And I think that, like, for example, we should teach ourselves just as much as we should teach our children to understand the power of intuition. Like, I love reading about this stuff. I love, like, learning about, you know, how you can get messages from unknown sources, get these communications, whether it's in a dream, whether it's in a premonition, whether it's in a feeling. Like, you know, you go into a space and you got a feeling like, ooh, I shouldn't be here. And if you listen to that premonition, then you go back and you find out that there was somebody that was hurt there. There was some type of tragedy that took place there. Or you go into a place and you say, ooh, oh, I feel love in here.
Back to the vibrations once again.
Right, exactly. The vibration is higher. You know,
I think we experience it. I think we have the responsibility of teaching our young people, ourselves and our young people, to trust it, because we feel it, but then we are confronted with experiences where if your parent or your guardian tells you, I don't care what you think you heard or I said go do X, right? Then you don't have the opportunity to actually follow through with what, you know, ultimately you feel like you're being guided to do. So we're in an interesting space now, I think, also with how much, you know, having to be able to respect young people.
Absolutely.
And their understanding of how that unseen source shows up in their lives.
Right. Damon checked in and said, look, this was a God thing. I tried to update my resume and to job search and couldn't do it. God told me not to. I'm going to handle this.
Go ahead.
Sometimes that's the message. Hey, brother, see, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes these, you know, when you get premonitions or intuitions or you get these messages or level of communication, they don't break it all down, tell you this is exactly what's going to happen. This is how you should move. It could be a word. It could be a phrase to just open up your consciousness. Like, please, and this is why, and I think Belinda Skinner mentioned this earlier today when we were talking about the images. like she made the point, like you got to protect your mental spaces. And that's why we have to, and Belinda, I loved that you mentioned that, because that's exactly what we have to do in 2022. We have to protect the mind in order to leave space for the divine. I'm just Lord
Come on,
Jesus.
Farajii.
Woo!
Come on. Yep.
This came out, folks. Let me tell you, we got to protect the mind to leave space for the divine. If you are flooding your brain with all this crap, right? You flooding your brain with all this gossip, crazy images, crazy news stories, right? If you just, and you're not confronting, you're not because there's pressure on the inside of the body just as much as there's pressure in the atmosphere, right? And so if you don't go up against the pressure that's coming from the outside, you are going to naturally it's like with walls coming in on you. You won't have the internal fortitude to take on the pressure from the outside. You have to fortify your mind and your spirit, right? To the point where you gotta make sure that in some way, shape, or form, and this is, it could be a prayer, it could be an affirmation. It's got to be something that is going to connect your brain, your mind, to a higher self, to your creator, I don't know what your religious persuasion may be, but it's got to be something above you. And I think that's the part that many of us, like our culture is so wrapped up in the lower part of us. It's so wrapped up on the horizontal nature of human beings. It don't edify us. It don't take us to the vertical. So, you get a premonition and you blow it off. You get a message, you get a communication, and you just
I mean, and that's go ahead.
Because you and I notice this, when we get premonitions about people that we bring into our lives, and we talk about, everybody talking about that red flag, but then you got a feeling about an individual in your life. Sisters, you might have a boyfriend or a male friend that you might be interested in, and you're like, but something is off about him. Something ain't right to the spirit. You better listen to the spirit. You know what I'm saying? They'll be like, he probably just because he all right, he good.
They say
if we not vibing with a woman,
that's it.
Something don't seem right. Better listen to yourself. Because what happens, and as we wrap up today, because what happens is when you start to silence those little voices and those communications, you find yourself in a space where you feel lost. You feel like you don't have any guidance, no direction. You feel lost. And if you ever felt lost, I've felt lost in various moments of my life. If you ever felt lost, that ain't a good feeling.
No.
It's like you got to go in yourself. And that's a very, very deep spiritual journey that you got to take. Lord, jeez. Come on, man. Come on, man.
Farajii?
I'm telling you, Bakari, like, you do this, Bakari. This is your fault anyway.
Oh, man, don't put that on me, man. Look, I'm gonna just put it out there for folks. Historically speaking, they said this is Harriet Tubman had a lot of these premonitions, a lot of visions that she experienced, and that's what was able to help her navigate the Underground Railroad down to, she knew a lot about roots and herbs and different things that she could give folks along the way to keep them healthy, to keep children, babies quiet, all types of things. So it's a history, which are, traditions that we come from, right? And we all had that ability, I think, to be able to listen to that small voice. The last thing I'm gonna say, Farajii, to your point, is I think when you hear it as a whisper, it's like, are you being quiet enough? Are you getting grounded enough to be able to listen? I think the quieter and the more we can sort of humble ourselves to listen, the louder we give that small voice, that source to speak to us in ways that that prove like, yes, I'm willing to listen. I asked to hear it. You said it. I'm gonna go ahead and listen. So, yeah.
Look, let me just tell y'all, I get excited about these things, and I hope that that you don't mind that. I hope you don't mind that we kind of go into this space, but these are the intangible parts of our culture, because the culture is made up of so many different elements, and understanding your connectedness to your spiritual side, understanding your connectedness to the universe is a huge part of the culture, which is why I think that we are in the space that we're in emotionally, mentally, because we don't put the effort to cultivate our spiritual side, right? I mean, I'm not asking people to be religious. People say, I'm not religious. I don't subscribe to this, or, I take peace. And I get it. But I think all of that is not by coincidence. I think that there is there's an awakening that's happening in this country, spiritual awakening, as well as happening around the world, where people aren't going to just go for the okie doke when they're understanding of the divine, understanding of the universe. I think people are waking up, right? So now people are in a space of seeking rather than just saying, okay, my parents taught me this, my grandparents taught me this, therefore it is. We're all in a space of like,
investigating.
I believe there's more to this. I respect and love my mama. I respect and love grandma, but they may not have gone too far. They may not have been right on this. So, it's important that we have all these other conversations, but we can't forget about the important conversations that we're all spiritual human beings in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully you have a soul. Hopefully you are cultivating your spirit. And most importantly, hopefully you are protecting your mind.
Yeah.
At the end of all of this, because if you don't have those things, then that leaves you devoid of your humanity, right? That leaves you in a space where you're here, but you're not here. Bakari, I always appreciate you, sis. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Another week in the books. Another week in the books, Farajii.
Your analysis and always adding to the culture. Thank you, sis.
Thank you, bro.
All right, folks. I thank each and every one of you for tuning in. Thank you for being with us today. A lot to talk about. Next week, we got a number of great special guests that are going to be joining us to discuss various things. Let me just share with you very quickly. Of course, next week, we're going to celebrate and at least acknowledge the fact that you have LGBTQ. Pride Month is kicking off in June. We'll certainly talk about that. We're also going to have some other guests that's going to continue the conversation that we started this week, especially the aftermath of Uvalde, Texas. I mean, there's just a lot. And of course, this is a Memorial Day weekend. So, take the time to really, spend time with your family, with your loved ones. And certainly let's reflect on the men and women in the service who have given their lives or who have dedicated themselves to a cause bigger than themselves. This is a very, very important time. Of course, if you can go to your cookouts and all of those things, but this America is different today, folks. America is very, very different today. So this Memorial Day weekend, let us figure out how we can become different based upon the change of the time. That we don't just be the same way all the time. We have to change with the time. We have to evolve, and we have to understand that in order for us to make the progress we truly want to make, then that requires sacrifice. That requires a greater level of commitment. And most importantly, folks, that requires us to become active in our citizenry. So, I hope and pray that you have a safe Memorial Day weekend. All right, as always, make sure you show your support for Black Star Network. You can check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. We got some great shows. I mentioned earlier, Dr. Greg Carr has his new show, a new episode of The Black Table that just dropped today. So make sure you check it out, Black Star Network on Monday. We have Get Wealthy. Of course, we got a Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. And, of course, you got The Culture. So make sure y'all tune in to all of the great programming, continue to support us. And, of course, if you can't support us, then let your family and friends know that Black Star Network is free. It can be downloaded, and it's just for you. Unapologetically unfiltered Black news and Black-owned media. All right. Monday, we got the day off. So Tuesday, you will see us back with a live show. So I hope and pray that you have a safe weekend. And as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk Tuesday for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.